These are 6 of the most legendary NBA players of all time, but there was a point when negative media narratives threatened their legacies. After we cover each narrative, we'll decide whether or not it was justified. Starting with Wilt Chamberlain, the stat-padding loser. In Wilt Chamberlain's era, many viewed him as a statistical marvel who underperformed when it mattered most. While Chamberlain put up record-shattering numbers, rival Bill Russell collected championships. During the 1960s, Russell's Celtics defeated Wilt's teams in 7 of 8 playoff series. Russell won 11 rings in his career compared to Wilt's 2. This fueled a narrative that Wilt was selfish and a loser who couldn't elevate his team in clutch moments. Fellow players openly questioned Wilt's heart under pressure. Hall of Famer Rick Barry once brutally said, "Wilt is a loser. He is terrible in big games. When it comes down to the closing minutes of a tough game, Wilt doesn't have it. There's no way you can compare him to a pro like Bill Russell or a Jerry West. These are clutch competitors." After a crushing Game 7 loss in 1965, even Wilt himself noted, "People started calling me a loser." The media portrayed Russell as the ultimate winner and Wilt as the guy who piled up stats but shrank in big games. However, over time, the narrative sort of got lost to history, partially because people revisited Chamberlain's playoff performances. It showed that Wilt often played brilliantly in defeat, and that his team's shortcomings weren't solely on him. Many of the Celtics' wins were razor thin. 4 of Russell's series victories over Wilt hinged on a last-second shot or a stop by a different Celtic. In other words, Wilt was usually incredible even in losses, and a few bounces determined the narratives. Importantly, Russell also had the superior supporting cast and coaching in most matchups. As these nuances were pointed out, the Wilt can't win label lost some traction. Hoop fans just began recognizing that Chamberlain's reputation as a playoff underachiever was overstated. His 2 championships and multiple Game 7 heroics showed he could deliver in big moments. He just usually ran into the greatest dynasty ever. So was the narrative ever really justified? Not really. This is a classic case of the NBA fans and media creating a narrative with a complete disregard for context. Chamberlain's postseason resume, while lighter on rings than Russell's, was still elite. He owned numerous playoff records and even elevated aspects of his game in the playoffs. The loser tag looks absurd in hindsight. Wilt was a 2-time champ, a Finals MVP, and often the only reason his teams even had a chance against Boston. As one person put it, just because Russell won more doesn't make him greater by default. Chamberlain's legacy has been revised with a more balanced view that appreciates his playoff dominance even in defeat, erasing the notion that he was a big moment loser. Magic Johnson, Tragic Johnson. Magic led the Lakers to a championship in his rookie season, where he also earned Finals MVP. It's considered one of the most legendary Finals performances ever, and it immediately established him as one of the most clutch players in the NBA. So how come just a few years later, people began to doubt his ability to perform in late-game situations? It started in his second season, where he performed poorly against the underdog Rockets in the playoffs. In the final game of the series, the Lakers had a chance to win it, but Magic shot an air ball and their season came to an end. The Lakers would go on to win the championship the very next year, where Magic earned his second Finals MVP. However, the Rockets series was still burned into some people's minds. Now, fast forward to the 1984 NBA Finals. The Lakers are playing the Celtics, and Magic had arguably the worst clutch performances of his entire career. Spreading out across games 2, 4, and 7, Magic had horrific late-game turnovers, missed overtime free throws, and an embarrassing situation where he actually dribbled out the clock at the end of a tied game instead of going for the win. That blunder might sound a little familiar. These mistakes led to Boston fans and media coining the nickname Tragic Johnson. And despite him already having 2 Finals MVPs, the narrative started to gain legitimate traction across the basketball world. Basically, the story became, Magic is unbelievable until things get tough. Then he just might fold under pressure. So Magic took all that criticism personally and got to work in the summer of '84, practicing non-stop to fix his jump shot and sharpen his focus, because he was definitely not going to let that embarrassment happen again. It paid off fast. The next season, Magic and the Lakers got revenge by beating the Celtics in the finals. But the real statement came 2 years later in 1987, when Magic made one of the most clutch shots ever, the famous Junior Sky Hook. With just 2 seconds left in Game 4 against Boston, Magic floated a smooth hook shot over a crowd of defenders to win the game and basically lock down another championship. Moments like that, plus his 5 rings and 3 Finals MVPs, completely erased the whole tragic nickname. By the late 80s, nobody doubted Magic's clutch abilities anymore. So, was the narrative ever justified? Definitely not. Magic's whole career proves you can't judge someone based on one rough patch. Looking back, 1984 was just a bad moment for a 24-year-old superstar facing an elite opponent. Instead of folding, Magic responded like a legend. He got better and came back even more clutch. Considering Magic already had 2 Finals MVPs when this narrative started, he's probably the best example we'll cover today of how narratives don't need logic or even basic common sense to catch fire. Michael Jordan. You can't win championships with a scoring champ. Michael Jordan entered the league with a bang, averaging 28 points per game, winning Rookie of the Year, and making the All-NBA second team. On top of that, the Air Jordan shoes took off immediately and basically created sneaker culture. An MVP and a few scoring titles later, Jordan was still leaving people in awe, but had yet to win a championship. Thus began the narrative that, as sensational as Michael was, you just couldn't win it all with a selfish scoring champion as the leader of the team. He started to get compared to all-time greats George Gervin and Elgin Baylor, who, despite being unbelievable scorers, retired without any championships. This narrative wasn't completely unfounded, since a scoring leader hadn't won a championship since 1971. By 1989, the media was pretty open about Jordan's playstyle not being conducive to winning championships. But then came the 1991 playoffs. Jordan learned to trust his teammates better under coach Phil Jackson, while still staying aggressive on offense. Not only did he lead the league in scoring for his 5th consecutive year, but he also led Chicago to their first title. The cherry on top? In the finals, MJ led the Bulls in both scoring and assists. From there, you probably know the rest. Behind MJ, the Bulls would go on to win 5 more championships in the 90s. To put the narrative even deeper in its grave, Jordan passed the ball to Steve Kerr in the 1997 NBA Finals, where Kerr hit the game-winning shot that secured Jordan's 5th title. By this point, it was clear to even the biggest haters that Jordan wasn't struggling in the 80s because he wasn't good enough as a leader. He was struggling because no one can do it alone. So, was the narrative actually justified? This one is a bit more fluid than the previous 2. Of course, it turned out to be completely untrue, but for a time, it was technically true. You could maybe forgive some critics for comparing Jordan to other scorers who weren't able to win. I mean, a scoring champion hadn't won since '71, so it wasn't an insane thought. I'm not saying this was a great take, just that there might be room for a little bit of grace. Of course, like nearly all narratives, it still ignored context. Jordan was young and didn't have the supporting cast or the coaching to overcome legendary teams like the Bad Boy Pistons. Dirk Nowitzki, the soft European. Back in the 2000s, NBA fans and analysts had a thing for calling European players soft, and no one got hit with that label harder than Dirk Nowitzki. Despite being an MVP caliber star and keeping the Dallas Mavericks in the mix every season, Dirk's reputation took some major hits after a couple of brutal playoff losses. First, in 2006, the Mavs blew a 2-0 lead in the NBA Finals to Miami, with Dirk struggling in key moments. Then, in 2007, after leading the entire league in wins with 67, Dallas got embarrassed in the first round by the, we believe, 8th-seeded Warriors team. These meltdowns locked in the narrative. Dirk was soft, a choker, and not the kind of player who could carry a team to a title. Not to mention, his style just didn't help. He was a 7-footer who relied on jump shots, wasn't a big talker, and didn't play dominant defense. These traits are much more common in today's game, but Dirk was ahead of his time. At one point, he was even given the nickname Dirk Nowitzki because he had no D. By the late 2000s, it seemed set in stone that Dirk would go down as a prolific scorer who didn't have the chops to lead a team to a championship. Then 2011 happened. Before the Mavericks were to have a showdown with the newly formed super team in Miami, they had to get through the 2-time defending champion Lakers. After sweeping them and taking down the KD Thunder in 5 games, their date with LeBron in the Heat was set. At this point, the Mavericks were already on a sweet run, and Dirk had come through with plenty of clutch performances throughout the playoffs. But in the finals, he took things to another level. In Game 2 of the series, he scored Dallas's final 9 points, including the game-winning layup, in an effort that completely flipped the narrative on its head. With the help of a strong supporting cast, Dirk was able to take down LeBron, Wade, and Bosh in arguably the most legendary and hard-fought championship run in NBA history. And to make things even sweeter, he didn't just get revenge on Miami, but he also fought through serious injuries throughout the finals, proving that he was anything but soft. So, was the narrative justified? This one's tough. On one hand, it's hard to blame the media for developing a soft narrative about a 7-foot player who shoots jumpers and isn't anything special on defense. But, on the other hand, his run in 2006 should have dispelled anything about him being too soft to win a title, or not being a big moment player. Not only did he lead the Mavs to the finals, but he had one of the greatest Game 7 performances ever against the 63-win Spurs. He dropped 37 points, including a game-tying and one to send it to overtime. Any negative narrative should have been dead right then and there. But hey, if that was the case, the media wouldn't have anything to talk about, I guess. Kobe Bryant. He can't win without Shaq. Kobe Bryant had the rings, the fame, and the fire, but was he really that guy? For years, critics whispered, and some even shouted, it was all Shaq. Then 2004 hit. The Lakers split, and the question became impossible to ignore. Could Kobe win without the most dominant big man in the game? After Shaq was traded, Kobe spent a few frustrating years carrying weaker Lakers teams, while Shaq immediately won a 4th ring in Miami. That was just another piece of evidence the critics used to declare Shaq as the man who primarily carried the Lakers. The media argued that Kobe had just been a sidekick, benefiting from Shaq's dominance, and that without him, Kobe would never win another championship. The Lakers' struggles from 2005 to 2007 only fueled this take. LA missed the playoffs in 2005, then got bounced in the first round in 2006 and 2007, despite Kobe putting up monster scoring numbers. The media locked in on the idea that Kobe was brilliant individually, but couldn't elevate his team to a championship level. They pointed to moments like the 2004 finals, when the Lakers lost to Detroit and Kobe shot poorly, or Game 7 against Phoenix in 2006. The Lakers blew a 3-1 lead to the Steve Nash-led Suns, and in Game 7, Kobe scored 1 point in the second half, going 0 for 3 from the field. Now, critics claimed he was making a statement to show his teammates couldn't win without him. But Kobe himself said that he felt the team's only chance to win was if he got his teammates more involved. Regardless, by 2007, with Shaq sitting on 4 rings and Kobe still stuck at 3, NBA media hammered the phrase, "Kobe can't win without Shaq." Meanwhile, Kobe, well, he heard every word. The very next season, things started to change. The Lakers traded for Pau Gasol and made the finals, but they did lose. However, this already started to change Kobe's reputation. Then, in 2009 and 2010, Kobe buried the narrative and all of his haters for good. He led the Lakers to back-to-back championship as the unquestionable team leader and best player. He won his first Finals MVP in 2009 after defeating Dwight Howard's Orlando Magic, then followed it up with another one in 2010, this time taking down the Celtics. These championships erased any doubts. Kobe could win as the main guy, and he could do it against elite competition. Kobe would later say, whether it was fair or not, people said Kobe can't win without Shaq. It was really important for me to get that done. And not only did he get it done, but he did it in spectacular fashion. So, was the narrative justified? Yes and no. Early on, the criticism was correct. Kobe hadn't won without Shaq yet. In fact, he'd done a lot of serious losing. But it ignored the bigger picture. He was still young, and no superstar wins alone. As soon as the Lakers built a title-worthy roster around him, Kobe made 3 straight finals appearances. Today, no one even mentions that he can't win without Shaq when discussing his legacy. Instead, his 5 championships, 2 finals MVPs, and relentless work ethic define his career. LeBron James. No clutch gene. LeBron had the talent, the MVPs, and the highlights. But when the game was on the line, did he have what it takes? Early in his career, the critics didn't just doubt him, they swore he crumbled under pressure. People pointed to moments like his passive fourth quarter in a 2010 playoff elimination game against Boston, or his puzzling struggles in the 2011 NBA Finals, where he all but disappeared in key fourth quarters as Miami fell to Dallas. The media pounced. Talking heads like Skip Bayless branded him LeBrick or Lagon whenever he missed a big shot. LeBron doesn't have the clutch gene became a go-to phrase on sports shows, repeated so often and with so much confidence you'd almost think it was a fact. They further argued he lacked the killer instinct of Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, claiming he preferred to pass instead of taking the game-deciding shot himself. By 2012, the narrative was inescapable. A single missed shot or late-game pass from LeBron could dominate sports headlines for days. 9 years into his career, the perception was clear. LeBron was a generational talent, but when the stakes were highest, could you really trust him? The shift began in 2012, but by 2016, the LeBron isn't clutch talk was dead and buried. His demolition of Boston in Game 6 of the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals was his first major rebuttal. That same year, he won his first championship, shaking off the weight of past failures. A year later, he repeated as champion, sealing Game 7 of the finals with 37 points and clutch jumpers down the stretch. But the moment that truly put an end to this narrative came in the 2016 NBA Finals. LeBron dragged Cleveland back from a 3-1 deficit against the 73-win Warriors team. He delivered a Game 7 masterpiece, a triple-double, clutch plays on both ends, and the signature moment. His chase down block on Andre Iguodala with under 2 minutes left. It wasn't just a great defensive play, it was an all-time clutch moment, proving he could dominate when it mattered most. By then, advanced stats had already dismantled the narrative. An ESPN study showed his teams thrived in crunch time. By the late 2010s, LeBron had accumulated more playoff buzzer beaters than anyone in history, surpassing even Jordan. So, was the narrative justified? Not at all. The LeBron isn't clutch narrative was always an exaggeration built off a few bad moments rather than the full picture. It's a fact that LeBron has been one of the most dominant clutch performers in NBA history, and that didn't just magically start after his first stint in Cleveland. Even his so-called failures are now seen in context. His 2007 finals loss, for example, wasn't a choke job, but rather a young star carrying an outmatched Cleveland team against a powerhouse Spurs squad. Still, the haters will try and bring the narrative back to life whenever LeBron misses a buzzer beater or makes a pass at the end of the game instead of shooting. But honestly, if he hasn't already proven to these people that he's clutch, I'm not sure anything will convince them.